I would like to introduce Derrick Timm of Motorola Solutions Applied Technology Group. Derrick has been instrumental in the product development and prototyping activity at Motorola for 6 years and was involved with the evaluation, justification, the purchase, and implementation of 3D Systems Figure 4 3D printer. Derrick, thanks for joining us today and sharing the challenges of your responsibility at Motorola and your experience with the Figure 4. I'm sure many of you out there joining us share similar obstacles to what Derrick may encounter in your companies. Derrick, could you tell us a little bit about what you and your staff does at Motorola and how 3D printing has benefited that activity?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Here at Motorola Solutions, the Applied Technology Department, we focus more on unique solutions for our customers. So our volumes tend to be much smaller. We're not selling millions of products. We're selling, from 10 to 100. So we really need something that can prototype very quickly because every problem is very unique. So 3D printing has really come in and helped us in that area. We used to, have to go out and machine each part and check it one by one as we iterated. And now that we've moved to 3D printing, we're able to do that on a scale that we never did before. And this new printer especially has really escalated that speed as well. So where we used to be able to 3D print either in-house on our own machine or out of house in a matter of a couple days, now we're able to do it in a matter of a couple hours.
Wow. It sounds like providing really fast, extremely detailed components to shorten that iterative design process are the biggest parts of the service you guys provide to the engineers there and your customers. How did those demanding requirements influence your decision to buy the Figure 4?
So we previously had a different printer. That printer was an FDM printer. It allowed us to print bigger fixtures and things like that, but it was really lacking in that fine detail, like you mentioned, and things like living hinges, rubber parts, none of that could be done on that printer. So previously we relied on other companies to do our printing to accomplish living hinges, rubber buttons, those type things. When we set out, maybe a year or so ago, we were looking for a printer that could do those things that we were not currently capable of doing in-house. So that's when we reached out to you guys and we saw that, the Figure 4 had a lot of the things we were looking for. It had a very large material selection to choose from that included, ABS-like materials, rubber materials, those type of things. On top of that, we really love the speed. So our current FDM printer, it does okay, but if you have a 2 or 3 inch tall build, it's going to take multiple hours, 5 to 8 hours to complete. So we were still only able to iterate about once a day at best. This new printer, allows us to iterate 3 to 4 times a day or more. So that's where we're really seeing a lot of benefit from this.
So it sounds like limitations and shortcomings in your previous systems really drove the decision to bring in the Figure 4.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. We were just limited with things like snap hinges. We just couldn't do those before. Like I said, we had to rely completely out of house, and with procurement and stuff, that takes 2 to 3 days to accomplish that. So, and it's much more expensive than printing in house. But for us personally, the biggest challenge or obstacle we were facing was just a time aspect. So if we were to iterate, say a clip or something, we just could not trust the FDM printer because of the way that it prints. We couldn't trust the snap fits. The detail just wasn't there. So we would have to rely on going out and printing multiple times, getting parts back and checking them. And it was a rather slow process even by 3D printing standards. So we really wanted to bring something in, that would allow us to do that in-house, and that's where the Figure 4 has really accomplished that goal.
Oh, good. There's a number of OEMs that produce machines or 3D printers out there. Did the fact that 3D Systems was the OEM on that machine, they manufactured it, and know that you're going to be your support company, did that influence your decision at all?
It did. So, we do a lot of research on 3D printer companies that are available. We attend a lot of the seminars and the conferences and stuff for those.
Right.
2 of the big names, one is 3D Systems. They were one of the bigger names, and so we had a lot of trust with that company. I know big Motorola, so we're Applied Technology, but big Motorola has had talks with 3D Systems and stuff, and they have some of their machines. So we were very comfortable using them. We knew that they had good support and they've been around. So you're
Right,
getting
right.
a quality product. So
Okay,
that's
good.
where we first started looking. And so we brought you guys in, and it's been perfect ever since. So
Good. Good relationship.
yeah, yep.
Over the last year, you had your machine. I'm sure you've done numerous projects. Can you share maybe some details about some of those projects or any of the projects and
Yeah.
how the Figure 4 really helped?
Yeah, I'll point to one in particular. We had a project where we had to create a battery door that slid on, think of like a remote control type device. So you have a battery door at the back that slides over and it snaps. Typically, that's not an overly complex part, but in this particular design, the space for that battery door was barely bigger than the battery itself. So we had very, very little room to work with those clips. So this 3D printer really became instrumental in printing multiple iterations and multiple styles of clips. The Pro Black 10 material that we use is very good for living hinges, which is really crucial because we need it to mimic, very closely to polycarbonate, what the final product will be built out of. And so
Right.
like the FDM printer that we have in house, it can't mimic that. If you snap the thing on, it will literally snap the clips off. And so this material is very flexible, and very closely
Kind of
mimics.
like this one?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So we were able to use that material to really dial in this hinge, and it's a very complex little hinge, but, probably through, I'd have to estimate 30 or 40 iterations that we ran, but it really only took probably 10, maybe 2 weeks worth of time to dial up, where normally that would take us in the past, 6, 7 weeks just because we have to deal with vendors going in and out. So
Right.
that's where we really saw a huge benefit was just the time and being able to, print, change right on the fly. So I will
So
point
with all
to
the materials available on that machine, I imagine you switch materials occasionally. Is that something you do? And what materials do you prefer?
Yeah, definitely. We started with just the basic gray material that they have. It works fine and stuff for prototyping, but we quickly realized that the Pro Black 10 is really what we wanted to do everything in. So we pretty much use the Pro Black 10 as a base material. We print parts that we're going to be using in housings, other stuff. It just has a lot of great mechanical properties, being temperature and flexibility and stuff. We've also, the other material that we've used a lot and have gotten a lot of use out of is the elastic material. Like the one you just held up there. Yep. We print gaskets in that and buttons, and typically we have to mold those. And with 3D printing, until this came out, we really didn't have a good way to test those ahead. So we relied heavily on just design specs and previous experience, and then we'd go mold those. But very often we molded those, got them, and they were too tight or too stiff, and we ended up actually reworking the tool, which is quite costly to do.
Right,
so,
right.
Right off the bat, the first project I had, we printed some buttons in it, and on top of just being really good to show customers for demos because they look and feel like a real, rubber button. It also on the back end really saves on that molding time.
Yep. You mentioned gaskets. Are you running fluids through your parts?
No, typically it's more for waterproofing. So
waterproofing. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll run like a gasket, and it's normally at the EM, level. So we end up still molding those gaskets. But for the initial evaluation of it, we'll 3D print those gaskets in there. A lot of our specs don't necessarily have to be IP67, but they do need to be water repellent. And so, we go through, like a spray test and those type things. And this really allows us to quickly turn gaskets, where normally that would be kind of a more difficult process.
Oh, good. What about larger parts? I imagine occasionally you have a request for a larger part. How do you handle those types of builds?
Yeah, I gotcha. I know the machine does have the ability to split the parts and create a larger part. We haven't used that a ton yet, but what we do right now is typically our parts are only large in one direction. So normally we're not printing, you know, an 8x8 block of anything. Normally
Right.
you have something that's, you know, maybe a half an inch by 4 inches by 8 inches. And so in this,
Okay.
you know, in this setup, we just tilt it on its axis. It actually prints better in that direction anyway.
Oh,
And so
good.
that's how we've really been handling all the big parts, is to just tilt the part in the machine. So, yeah.
Good. Good. So anyway, to sum it up, what would you say the main benefits to Motorola
Mhm.
that you've realized as a result of having that machine, the Figure 4?
Yep, time more than anything.
Time.
You know, we are very much up against the clock to turn products as fast as we can in this line of work, and this printer has really come in big on that. So, like I
Good.
mentioned, with buttons and just housings and just even, you know, engineering models, we are able to really showcase parts and test parts much quicker than we were before. So,
Okay. Great. Well, Derrick, thanks again for sharing your experiences with me today.
yeah,
If any of you out there have questions for Derrick, send them in. We'll get you an answer. And again, Derrick, thank you so much.
yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. We'll see you.